Welcome, welcome, welcome to your Tuesday Mindset Mastery class with your professor, me, Laura Catella. If you are seeing this streamed in the Facebook group, I highly encourage you to join us on Zoom so that I can see your face. I can read your questions and commentary in the chat. And if time allows, we can participate in a discussion. None of that happens in the Facebook group. The Facebook group is great, but not for watching the live presentations. It's great for the discussions that occur afterwards. Those have been very, very magical. Hello to all my friends in the chat saying hi, seeing each other again. It's just a beautiful community of all of us coming together to explore mindset stuff. And with that, I will let everybody know that today's discussion, today's class, is going to be on dealing with rejection, being told no, being told you can't do that. Crickets, which is to say silence when you put yourself out there. And hate, which is more common on the internet than in face-to-face interactions, isn't it? We'll dive into successful ways to alleviate what fear of those things costs you, and some perspectives that should embolden you to move bravely in the face of that fear, and real coping strategies for when those things occur, because spoiler alert, all three of them will. But first, I want to celebrate because we are just around the 1 month mark of doing these weekly classes. Yay! And I want to recap some of the things we have gone through over the past month or so. It's bizarre because it's been a month, nearly to the day. The first one was on my birthday of January, so January 3rd. Today is February the 7th. And yet we have 5 classes, but it's been a month. Time! So weird, so malleable. The very first week of our Mindset Mastery class, we uncovered some mental blind spots that folks tend to have through our mental toughness quiz. In the second week, we dove into tactical ways to become more confident, not just airy-fairy me hyping you up. That's all well and good, but actual tactics you could deploy to feel more confident, especially as you're facing the unknown. That was a really fun class. Week 3, we went over how to stop procrastinating no matter what. We realized that you're all brilliant procrastinators. So can you procrastinate on self-doubt? Can you procrastinate on giving yourselves reasons not to do something? And can you procrastinate on procrastination itself? That was another very fun class. All of these replays are available to you in a few different locations based on your preferences. You could access them in the vault, which if you're on the email list, you have access to that link to the vault. You can find them on the Mindset Mastery podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And you can find them on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. So never fear if you're hearing about some of these classes and you're like, I didn't see those. All of the recordings are available to you. On week 4, we went through how to feel worthy, how to feel self-worth, no matter what. Some of that will tie into today because it's fair to say, and it's reasonable, that when you deal with rejection, crickets, or hate, your self-worth takes a little bit of a ding. It hurts. And so we will dive into that some more today. And last week, we went through another one of my favorites, empowered communication. How to speak, how to write effectively to get enrollment, and in a way that is authentic to you so that we are not faking it till we make it. We don't like that phrase here. No wonder people feel imposter syndrome if they're trying to fake stuff till they make it. And that moves us, that is our recap of everything we've done. It's a lot for a month. We got a lot done in the month. And so if any of those, again, spark your interest and you weren't there for them, please do check out the vault so you could get your hands on that material. Let's move into the meat and potatoes of today, shall we? Dealing with rejection, crickets, and hate. You see me looking off to the side. For those of you who do not know, I have my notes there. and the notes will be available after the call is done. What is at stake if you are afraid of rejection, crickets, and hate? If you are so afraid of rejection, crickets, or hate to the point that you are stagnant, to the point where you are not moving, to the point where you are not experimenting, to the point where you are not communicating, what is that fear costing you? A lot. A lot. And in the moment where you feel the fear, it might make sense for you to not do the thing. That's what fear is meant to do, right? Hold you back from doing the thing. And it might have really kind reasons for that. The fear wants to keep you safe. But that's all limbic system. That's all monkey brain. We don't need our monkey brain in this situation. We need our frontal lobe, our processing brain in this situation. So the very first thing for us to think about, and a lot of the questions I ask you are designed to stay open. These are open questions that you maintain receptivity to, that you keep letting experiences of life continuously feed you answers to these questions. These are not, oh yes, oh no type of questions, are they? But what is your fear costing you? That switches off the automation of the fear, and it should nudge some action out of you in the face of fear. Because when you don't act due to the fear, you're saying that not being rejected, avoiding rejection, crickets, and hate is more important to you than moving towards your dreams. And for everybody who is the type of person who would take time out of their busy Tuesday to participate in this, that's bullshit. Fear of rejection, crickets, and hate should not be enough for you to not take a step towards your dreams, period. The way you deal with rejection, thank you, Mary. I know I was feeling this for the past 24 hours. I'm like, can't this call just start already? I am on one today. The way you deal with rejection, crickets, and hate. So I started abbreviating those three things, right? Because I was saying them so much. Rejection, crickets, hate. RCH. RCH. What is that one letter removed from? Rich. You drop an I in there and you get rich. In fact, even that way of saying it, right? You drop an I in there. When I deal with rejection, crickets, and hate, I am on the path to get more rich. RCH. The way you deal with RCH is a hugely important part of how you get rich. Notice that none of this is about stopping fear. It's not about becoming fearless. I am not here to teach you how to become fearless. That's bullshit. I am here to teach you how to become a fear facer. How it becomes something you do regularly. Face the fear. Because we all know that when we face fear, the fears go away. And then we get something new to fear. Awesome. That's a level up challenge. So we are not here to be fearless. We are not here to pretend to be something we're not or fake it until we make it. We are here to face the fear. And the more we face the fear of RCH, the more empowered we are to become RICH. How do we become more of a fear facer? The fear is coming from a good place. The fear is coming from a good but ironic place. The job of fear is to keep everything in your life the same. Keep everything in your life exactly the way it is today. Because even if some things suck today, your body knows it to be safe. It's not killing you. A lion is not gnawing at your leg. So even if it sucks, you are safe today. And the point of fear is to keep you safe and to keep everything the same. And of course, we have said this before, this is more sinister, especially when you are doing decently. Your fear wants to keep things the same, even if things suck. And it especially wants to keep things the same, especially if they are decent. So everything that's going on in your life that's decent, hey, it's good that things are decent. But that might be one of your biggest enemies and your biggest hindrances to growth, the fact that things are decent. So we got to put some consciousness there. This fear protects your ego. And there's something so ironic about this, because your ego wants to stay the same. Your ego doesn't want to take the blow of rejection, crickets, or hate. And so your ego is trying to protect itself. But in doing so, it doesn't give itself the opportunity to grow. It's very ironic. I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's almost like when people say, he's got a big ego, or she's got a big ego, it feels to me like that is in fact something different. Because what your ego is really doing is trying to make you play the same game, the same small game you're familiar with. When it is the stretch, when it is taking those steps into fear that will allow what people call the big ego to grow and actually get bigger. Because the more you face fear and the more you do the thing, the more your confidence and potentially your ego in that sense grows. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Hey, Issa, we have some folks in the waiting room. If you could please admit them. Thank you. Thank you for that. So this is the ironic place that the fear is coming from. And just casting that consciousness there will mean you're not so prey to it, and that you're able to take the actions, and we'll talk about what some productive actions are in just a little bit. Will help you take productive actions in the face of fear. So here is the question, another one, to ask yourselves regularly, especially when you're thinking about doing something or you're thinking about putting yourself out there, but there's chatter in your head, right? There's stuff going on that's holding you back from doing that thing. Here is a useful question. Is my ego in the way? Is my ego in the way of me doing the thing, of me putting myself out there? Is my ego in the way of me asking a question? Is my ego in the way of me asking for help? Is my ego in the way of me saying, I don't know, or I don't do that? Is my ego in the way of me setting a boundary? The answer will often be yes, right? And as soon as you know that, you have consciousness above the thoughts and the chatter, and you're able to behave a little bit differently. Remember, we talk mindset here, but the whole point in talking mindset is to modify our behavior, the things that we do. We get new perspectives and open up on different ways to think, and the goal is for us to behave differently and to behave in a way that moves us towards what we really want. So you will ask yourself regularly, especially when you're in rumination loops and especially when the chatter is going on in your head, is my ego in the way? And the answer will often be yes. What would you do if your ego was not in the way? How to deal with rejection, crickets, and hate. Here are some things to understand. Here are some things that should help. Remember, we've brought this up in at least 2 other classes. Consensus comes last. From my great mentor, Dan Nicholson. We are so trained, for a lot of good reasons. Reasons we're trained are great. But we're so trained to seek Consensus first. Hey, I have this idea. What do you think about that? Or I kind of want to do this thing. What are they going to say? But in those situations, I'm going to share my screen to show this very important chart again to you guys. Look at all this stuff I don't. Don't try to hack me, okay? Don't send me a Trojan virus because it'll definitely. The diffusion of innovation curve. For your ideas, for the things you want to experiment with, where are you? You are over here. Yet you're trying to get consensus from all of these other people. They are not here with you. It is not effective. It does not serve you to try to seek their consensus. Consensus comes last in the process. And remember, there'll be situations in your life and contexts in your life where you're the one who's over here. And that's totally okay. This chart is context dependent. So it makes no sense for you to try to get consensus from people who in those contexts are over here on the chart. Now, here is a very interesting, if I could cease sharing my screen so that I could see you guys again. Awesome. Here's another facet to this that just beautifully came to me as I was reading one of the latest editions of Harvard Business Review. This article discusses how experienced people in any industry will often shun or discredit or be skeptical about innovations. So you may look at the diffusion of innovation curve and think, well, an experienced person could be the one to give me consensus, right? They know this sort of game I'm trying to play. But what this article says is that the opposite is in fact true. And if you think about it, it makes sense because an experienced person will have this rubric in their head of what works and what doesn't. And they'll be judging you based on that. Whereas it might be more useful to communicate your vision to other people who have that novelty, who have that open curiosity that you have for many things. And I'll just say the line in here that summarizes this point. Experience is less relevant when assessing novel ideas, and experts' mental maps often break down in the face of new terrain. So it doesn't even necessarily make sense for you to go to an expert in your industry. Consensus comes last. So do things with disregard. Do not do things in the interest of getting consensus, okay? It will come last. What else does that mean? Rejection is a requirement. I want everybody to write that down. Keep that in their head. That's a mantra for you. Rejection is a requirement. It is not something you're trying to avoid. It is actually a box that you check on your processes, on your journey. And it's a repeating requirement. It will keep coming. It will keep coming. Rejection is no longer something that holds you back. It is, in fact, a requirement. How do I crystallize this even more? I would like everybody in here, in whatever way this effectively plays out for you, to set a goal to be rejected. I want you to hear 3 no's this month, in the month of February. Set a goal to hear 3 no's. This is not the same as crickets. So no response does not count. That's not a no. You got to keep following up until you get that no. Smack in the face. What is this going to do? Does it seem counterintuitive? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But now you're forced to put yourself out there. You're forced to ask for more. And of course, what you will a little bit hilariously and ironically find is that you hear more yeses than you could probably imagine. And hopefully, and then what does that mean? You got to push yourself further. Oh shit. Laura told me to get 3 no's. Here are a few people saying yes to me. Shit, what am I going to do? I got to ask for more. I got to ask more people. I got to find some strangers. I got to find some people who don't know me at all. Because it's more likely they'll say no to me. Now I got you talking to strangers. You're way less afraid of rejection, crickets, and hate now. Yes, Bobby got rejected. Hell yes. I love it. Meet that rejection quota, because every single one of us, myself included, we're not being rejected enough. We are not being rejected enough to grow in the way that we want to grow. There's no way. So set a goal, 3 no's this month. That's a thought on rejection. Now I have a thought on crickets. Because crickets can suck, right? Especially in the world of social media. We put things out there. Why? To get a response, right? This is not a diary. We're not doing it in private. So we put things out there and we want to get some interaction. When we say comment or send me a DM, we want people to take that action. And so when they don't, we don't get what we want and it hurts. But what we have gotten is a piece of data. Crickets equal data. 0 is a data point, a useful one. Way more useful than you sitting around not doing the thing out of fear. In a way, you end up in the exact same place, right? You put something out there, you get crickets. You don't do anything, you get crickets. Same outcome, but in that latter situation, you have no data. You are stuck in the rumination loop. At least if you have done the thing and you get no response, you know this didn't hit. Or shit, it could just be your reach was poor for whatever reason. And that's why when it comes to the social media game, that consistency is so important. Your post could have only been shown to 5 people. So that's why you have to keep going. So crickets is a data point. It is not a reflection on you or your worth, which we'll discuss more in a little bit. And I want to reinforce, I have put out many an offering to crickets. A lot of us in here are marketers. That is part of the game. Doing something, crickets, data point, modify and iterate, try again. That is the marketing game. That is it. It is not a self-worth facet of you. It, in fact, has very little, if anything at all, to do with you. Even my folks who are in the personal brand game. More on that in a little bit. Thank you for saying that, Christy. Christy says it's reassuring to know I'm not alone in dealing with crickets. That's why I make such an important point to say that. I am no stranger to crickets. I put out things to crickets at least monthly, at least, sometimes weekly. And does it hurt? Yeah, especially in the beginning, especially when it was a novel experience to me and I was telling myself the story, the untruth of, oh, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth it. That's where our brain very quickly goes because we're always interpreting the world through our lens. And in our heads, it's all about us, right? Neville Goddard says the world is you pushed out. And so if the story that I am telling myself is, I'm not worth it, then of course, anything that my very brilliant brain and your very brilliant brain can use to confirm that belief, that assumption of yours that you're not worth it, is exactly what your brain will find. Let me say that again because it's hugely important. If your assumption is somewhere deep in the dark, murky corners of your being, if your assumption is, I'm not worth it, that is what your beautiful, brilliant brain will find evidence of. And that is how your brain will interpret crickets if you're not careful. I'm just looking at the chat for a moment. I love you guys. Thank you for picking up what I'm putting down. Hell yes. And for those who have to leave early, that's cool. Make sure you get the recording for the rest of this, because I know I opened some loops early on that I want to somewhat close for you. So yes, we have put out many an offering to crickets, and a few more things I want you to think about to help alleviate the self-worth ding that tends to accompany crickets. We'll get into in just a little bit. But here's a reason I want you to be grateful for crickets, because crickets can oftentimes be way better than a mediocre response. A kind of response, a response from a few people. Let's think about this in terms of paid advertising, okay? You or a client of yours launches an offer on paid traffic and you get a mediocre response, right? You're just below break even. What might you do in that situation? Well, you start to tweak and optimize that thing. But now you're tinkering with something that's halfway. Versus if you got crickets, you could just totally scrap it and build something new with the potential to be way better off out of the gate. Business owners have fallen into these traps for years. Years and years and years spent tinkering something that was mediocre. Whereas if they got crickets, they could kick it out the door and start fresh. So this is a reason I want you to be grateful for crickets. Crickets are much better than a mediocre response. So when you see that 0, which is a data point, you could say, oof, thank you for that. Thank you. Now I know my people want something quite different, or they want it to be positioned quite differently. So we can be grateful for crickets. We are not wasting time with something that's mediocre. It's way better to fail dramatically and start again than to tinker with something that's half good. So crickets are way better. Now here's an important consideration. You need to catch when you're making this shit up in your head. You need to track stuff. You need to look at actual data. Because there may be times, like as an example, right? Oh, he looked at me. He looked at me funny. Well, did he? Or was that something in your head? Is that your interpretation? Because our brains are fast, man. They're fast and they're brilliant at doing this stuff. And so you have opportunities to catch, to reflect, look back. When you journal, when you put stuff in a Google sheet and you're tracking, sometimes you end up surprised, don't you? Because the data, in fact, doesn't match the story you've told. I keep getting rejected. Nobody's responding. Oh, but 3 people have gotten on calls with me this week. So folks are responding. But again, it's our assumptions and the stories we tell that we find evidence of in the world, and we cherry pick. So we all have an opportunity to catch ourselves. Wait a minute, this just might actually be in my head. Let me go look back at the data with an objective stance and see what's really going on here. When you are afraid, when you are feeling afraid of rejection, crickets, or hate, again, it's normal and reasonable to feel this way. And when you do, you have an opportunity to talk about that. When you talk about the things that you are afraid of, you very quickly feel less afraid of them. It's our boiling water on the stove. If you have boiling water on the stove and there is a lid on top, what happens after a while? The water bubbles over. What happens when you remove the lid? The whole pot of water calms down. It's a really simple thing. You can communicate. We have a Facebook group for it. It's a beautiful, supportive place for this. When you are feeling afraid of rejection, crickets, or hate. You can even do this in your presentations. when it is authentic to you to do so. If you are about to make a pitch and offer somebody something, hey, based on our conversation, I know that I can help you. I'm about to offer you something right now, and I feel a little bit nervous to do so. So if my voice shakes, I hope you feel patient with me, but it's so important to me that I make this offer to you that I'm going to do it anyway. How much trust have you just gained? Instead of trying to fake it and be a sleek salesperson. So communicate. Talk about what you are afraid of and the power of the fear, the feeling of that fear taking over you will continue to go away. Take control. This is about you not being fearless, but becoming a fear facer. You control fear. It doesn't control you. What is an exercise in controlling that fear? Sit, reflect, write about it. What is the thing that you want to do? What are you afraid of happening? What will you do if that scary thing does happen? This is you taking control of fear, because as you work through that process, you'll realize, oh, actually, none of that, if it did play out, is nearly as bad as my nervous system tricks me into feeling. None of that's that bad. If you get on stage to present something, what is like the worst thing that could happen? You like vomit on yourself and pass out? I don't know. Like that would be a pretty harrowing outcome, right? But once you go through the process, what would happen after that, realistically? People would run up to you. They would be like, are you okay? Oh my God, I want to help you. So actually, like some good stuff could come out of that. You might go viral, right? If somebody recorded it. So once you actually go through that process, you're like, what I'm afraid of, in fact, is not so bad. That is all tactical work. And it only takes like 2 minutes of you controlling fear and fear not controlling you. So go ahead, write it down. I want to do this thing. I am afraid of this outcome. What will I do if that outcome actually plays itself out? Now you're in control of fear and fear is not controlling you. How many times does a batter miss? How many fucking times does a professional athlete, the best in the world, get up to bat, swing, and miss? The majority. If they're good, thank you, Carolyn. If they're good, they miss 2 out of 3 times. If they're good, it is insane. And what do they do when they miss? Stance back up and get ready to swing again. And none of us need to become professional baseball players. If we took even 5% of their resilience and their tenacity, how much stronger would we be? How much less would we give a shit about rejection, crickets, and hate? So we could deploy our baseball frame 2 out of 3 times. And you hear business owners say this all the time. How many successful business people openly discuss all the things they've tried, all the things that they've failed at? And they say it. What's the one thing, one of the few things that sets them apart? They just kept trying. They just kept swinging. Your consciousness of this is taking control so that you don't waste days, months, potentially even years of your life licking your wounds over a perceived failure. I believe we all have time and we all make time. Time comes from us, but we don't have time for that shit. That's one thing we don't have time for. Wasting so much time licking the wounds of our perceived failures. So we'll deploy our baseball frame when it is appropriate, when you're feeling called to do so, as another option, instead of getting stuck in a rumination loop and feeling bad for yourself. Here's another thing to remember. This is one of my personally most useful strategies for dealing, especially with rejection and crickets. Hate's a little bit different. We'll get to that in a moment. But especially with rejection and crickets. Everything is about the other party. Everything is about the party that is rejecting you or staying silent to you. It is not about you. So when you interpret that rejection or that silence into, I am not good enough, they don't see my worth, you're making it about you, aren't you? What if you instead viewed the other party as an empowered human being who is trying to make the decision that best serves them in this moment in time right now? Now it has nothing to do with you, does it? It is all about them. This has energetically helped me so much. Because now I am a different Laura than the one who, oh, crickets, they must think I'm not worth it. No. They're trying to make the decision that is best, that they think is best for them at this moment in time today, period. That's it. I keep showing up, I keep doing my thing, and those who come to an understanding that taking whatever I have to offer is their empowered decision to make, and they will make it at the time they feel it is best for them to do so. Now I could just keep going and playing my game, because that is the reality of the situation. And as soon as you adopt that assumption, the more and more you practice making that assumption, again, more and more, that is what you'll find the evidence of. And that is why so many lurkers, people who don't even interact with your stuff, with time, with your consistency, they pop up and then they buy something from you. And you will feel like it's luck, but really your consistency has engineered luck for you. So everything is about the other party. I love each and every one of you to death, but it is not about you, honey. Their response is not about you. Now, here's the caveat. Here's a complexity. Here's nuance. Who else gets into the nuance of this shit? Fucking nobody. Because it's a little bit hairy at first, but it's really helpful. Because there's a communication, messaging, and positioning element here. So yes, it is true that it is entirely about the other party. They are empowered humans who will make the decision they feel is best for them at an exact moment in time. But what you might tell yourself when you hear that, and one thing I'm prone to telling myself when I say this is, well, if my messaging was better, if I communicated it better, if it was more clear, more resonant, whatever. And so my brain, my tendency and bias would be to brilliantly, through the mental gymnastics of my head, use that as the indicator. See, Laura, you really aren't worth it because you're not messaging appropriately. You're not saying it in the right way. You're still doing something wrong. That's my bias. That's where I would go to. But that is also not true, because that is literally marketing. That's all that is. That's marketing. Messaging, positioning, that's marketing. And what is marketing? Trying it, getting data, trying it again. So it is still not, no matter how much you'll try to make it a reflection of your self-worth, it's still not. They are an empowered person who will make the decision they feel is best for them at that moment in time. And we are constantly adapting, iterating, and experimenting with our messaging, because that's what the fuck marketing is. That's the landscape. Now we have empowered, in control lenses through which we interpret rejection, crickets, and hate. And it is not this story of where we're not worthy. It's simply not. And remember this, rejection, crickets, and hate, these are leveled up problems. In order to face them, you must be doing something, right? You can't be rejected if you're not putting yourself out there. So it's a great thing. If you're experiencing these, it means you are leveled up. It means you're doing stuff that 99.9% of the population will not do because they don't even put themselves out there. So if you're experiencing these, you are experiencing level up problems. And now that you have some of the frameworks and some of the perspectives that could help you cope with them, you're like leveled up on the level up. Let's talk a little bit about hate. Hate's a motherfucker and a weird phenomenon, especially of the internet, right? And I believe that a lot of us instinctively know this to be true, that hate is confused love. Hate is confused love. If you could get somebody to hate you, man, you're powerful. You're powerful, aren't you? To get somebody to hate you, wow, you must be pretty damn powerful. You must have made quite an impact. And we know that haters are usually in pain. Haters are usually in pain. Anybody who would take the time to write something hateful to you on the internet is somebody I feel intense sadness for. I am sad for them that they would take their time to do that. And I'll show you a quick example. This is a fun one. I have more, but I didn't go through and keep taking screenshots. But here was one in one of my shorts on YouTube. Did you put the words over your Adam's apple on purpose? Brutal. Brutal, right? And so, just like letting you guys know, I hear crickets all the time. I also get hate all the time. And just like rejection is a requirement out here on the internet, hate is also a requirement. Most people will not understand. Remember the diffusion of innovation curve. Most people will not understand the shit that you are trying to do. You are here to level up your mindset on a Tuesday. You are not like most people. Stop trying to expect the average to understand. They're not meant to understand. If they understood, you might be too average. If the average understood, right? You know, we always say everything's distributed on a bell curve. Next time I'll have an image of a bell curve, but I assume most of you know what it looks like. And intelligence is distributed on a bell curve. And so you have average intelligence, right? There is a 50% mark for intelligence. And yet everybody assumes that they are above average intelligence. Yet that cannot be true. Most people are below that bar. I'm going to give you an example. I was checking out a study done, I think, out of Yale the other day. This is phenomenal shit right here. And there are other implications of the study that I'm going to tell you about right now that we'll discuss in future weeks because it's fascinating. But there was a study done out of Yale, and they gave folks two options. Option one, you work at a job where you earn $50,000 a year, and everybody else at the job earns $25,000 a year. Option two is you work at a job where you earn $100,000 per year, but everybody else earns $250,000 per year. Which one would you feel happier at? Which one would you feel happier at? 46% of people chose option one, where they would make half the money, $50,000 instead of $100,000, but they would feel happier because they would know that they're making more than everybody else. 46% of people. That is your average. When we're looking around out here and everybody thinks they're higher than average intelligence, but those who answer that question, I would make half the money, but I would feel better because I'm making more than anybody else. That's the real indicator, in my opinion. That is your average. Stop trying to appeal to those people. It does not make sense. So when you're seeking consensus, when you are worried about rejection, crickets, and hate from those people, it does not make sense. They would take half the money just to feel like they make more than everybody else. Because their comparison is so important to them that they would cost themselves $50,000 a year, double the amount. 46%. At least it wasn't a majority, right? But it was still 46%. And that's them making a conscious choice. That's a conscious choice. Forget about the ways that social comparison and that comparing they do affects them subconsciously. Forget about it. So stop giving a fuck about what those people think. Let's not be interested in that. Most people will not understand. They are not meant to. Of course they won't. Here's another iteration on this. Every prophet, this is not religious, but in lore and in allegory, every hero, every prophet leaves their hometown. I believe it's Dr. Jeff Spencer. Awesome. You could catch some of his videos on YouTube. He coined this idea of the champion's mind. And he's like, you want to be a prophet? Leave your hometown. Every prophet leaves their hometown. You cannot expect the average, and I don't mean to use that term pejoratively. I really don't. People who are on their own different mission from yours, you just cannot expect them to understand your shit and to understand your mission. And when they don't understand, how do they tend to respond? With rejection, crickets, and hate. Every prophet leaves their hometown. Where do you go instead? Have your circles of trust. It's a great way to cope, not just with rejection, crickets, and hate, but with anything and everything. Have your circle of trust. We have one in the Facebook group together. Build, nurture those communities, especially in the good times. Have it set up. Have it ready to go in the good times. Because when you're feeling like shit, it's going to be much harder for you to reach out. But if the support system is already there, it will be easier for you to use it when you need it. Don't look to the average to assuage your ego. They're not there for that. Every prophet, I know. The prophet. That could be one of your taglines, Carolyn. The prophet. And that is having those communities of the non-average is so important to you on that journey. And what's so beautiful is that we have one right here. Because remember this, Elon Musk gets hate. Elon Musk gets hate. A lot of hate. So you're out here trying to avoid hate? It doesn't make sense if you think about it that way. Elon Musk gets hate. So you could withstand some hate. Hate grows with scale. The more reach you get, the more hate you're going to get. The more love you get, the more hate you're going to get. The more money you make, the more hate you're going to get. The average is not meant to understand. They are average. They would take a 50% pay cut. Elon Musk still gets hate. These are all concepts I'm throwing out at you to shift your thinking on hate. So just like we could seek rejection, we could seek hate. Not in the sense that we become an asshole to elicit hate, but in the sense that we are not afraid of hate. We are not being quiet out of fear of hate, because hate scales with everything else that'll grow with you as you grow in your businesses, in your leadership, in the development of your personal brand. And observe this. I have a theory. My theory is that nobody doing better than you, will hate on you. This is my observation. Nobody sexier, richer will hate on you. Now, let me know if you can pull up evidence to the contrary, but so far I haven't found it. It tends to be those underneath you who have the time to leave hate and to hate on you. Doesn't tend to be anybody you admire, right? The people who really matter. But just to nurture the way humans operate, because we have, I think it ties into the loss aversion bias. We think and feel more about the painful moments than we do the good ones, right? A loss hurts more than an equivalent gain feels good. And that is why, even if you get 10 glowing comments on something, but I get one where a guy insinuates that I'm a dude, basically, and that one stings more than all of the other good ones feel good. That's natural. That's the way our brains are wired. It's so that we really take the threat of a lion in a jungle seriously. Or we really know that if we touch the hot stove, it's really going to hurt. So we are wired for the bad things to have a larger impact on us than the good things. But if we are aware of this, we can modify our perceptions and behavior so that we're not like, why? I know I should care about the good. We know our brains are wired differently than that, and we can move forward. So observe. If anybody you admire, if anybody who is doing better than you is hating on you, observe who is. And so I will tell myself, and when I think of the Adam's apple comment and a few others that I've gotten from strangers on social media who have the time to do that, I just tell myself, I can't wait till I get 10 times as much hate. Because what does that mean? When I'm getting 10 times as much hate, I must be reaching 10 times more people. I must be creating 10 times more impact. So just like flipping rejection into a requirement, we can shift our fear of hate as well. And if you can make somebody hate you, you are very powerful. Got to be powerful to make somebody hate you. You've made such an impact. Wow. That's pretty dope. And another consideration for haters, twofold. Haters can be content fuel. Great fuel for content. And everybody in here can make a choice for how they deal with haters. You'll see different gurus do this in different ways, right? Gary Vee always comes out with, I love the hater. I empathize for the hater, right? He never specifically calls out or puts a hater on blast or anything like that. But he chooses to use the broad category of haters as an education opportunity for his audience, as a point of differentiation for him. Other guys like Grant Cardone, he'll openly call them out. And he'll be like, this guy said this about me. Thank you for the publicity. Thank you for the hate, da-da-da-da. And that's Grant's style. So each of you has an opportunity to choose your style. And in doing that, you get an understanding of who you are and what your game is and how you want to play it. If any of you follow the copywriter Ben Settle, oh my God, he uses haters as content fuel all the time. He'll use subject lines like, a troll approached me and said, ... And then he'll use the screenshot. I think he includes the person's name. And then he responds to the hate. So you can modulate how you want to treat or use haters as content fuel however you want in your style. It's a stylistic and a preference-based choice. And if you don't choose to ever put a hater on blast and call them out or anything like that, there is still an opportunity for you to address whatever it is that hater said. Because just like how we say if one person has a question, 5 other people have it. Well, it might be true. If one person hates on you for this, then it might bug 5 other people for that reason. So you could address it. Shit, maybe I'll do a video, you know. Some people have accused me of being a man, blah, blah, blah. It'll probably get good reach, right? It has a good chance of virality. So you can use hate as content fuel. And every time you deal effectively with rejection, crickets, or hate, I want you to understand that you are fueling your resilience. You are fueling your resilience. You are developing your thick skin, your strong backbone. We need these things in the public eye. And you are accepting opportunities to grow as a person, as a leader, in your self-concept. All of that is happening. And that's why when you drop an I in RCH, it plays a role in how you get rich. Now, as our hour comes to a close, I'm going to move into what may be the most emotionally complex factor here. And that is, it starts with a question, as usual. What does the rejection or the rejector, the crickets and the hater confirm for you? What is it that you're taking in that the rejection, the critics, or the hater are confirming for you? Because, and this might not happen all the time, you'll notice it. You only give a shit when it confirms something for you. When whatever that little bit of hate poked at, it poked at something that is real or significant, or a suspicion you had, or a fear that you had, that's when you give a shit about it, right? But if somebody was just hating on you with something that you knew was entirely untrue, you would not give much of a shit about it. So you have got to ask yourself, when you notice, man, this is still in my head, I'm still thinking about this, I still care. What is that confirming for you? What is your assumption that you're carrying around that rejection or that silence or that bit of hate is confirming for you? How is your brain interpreting that as evidence? What is that giving you evidence of? Because simply realizing that, and then we'll dive into in future weeks more ways how to shift the perspective on that. And you guys are already giving great, brilliant responses, right? When you care, it's because that rejection, that silence, or that hate is confirming some shit, something you got to work on, something about your value, something about how, see, I knew it wasn't going to work out. Things don't work out. Resources are scarce. I am unable. Because just like how in the one regard we say it's not about you, which is true. But when we care so deeply, it's because we're making it about us. And in that moment, it is all about us. And so simply having that awareness, instead of just feeling like shit or deciding to silence yourself or edit yourself because of those reactions, you have an opportunity to say, what is this confirming for me? Now you are getting so much more aware of your own stories. The first step is to realize that that is a story that you are telling yourself. And aren't you tired of carrying that story around? You can begin to detach those limitations from your identity. I want everybody to think that way. You have an opportunity to begin to detach those limitations from your identity. Because when you're not conscious and the feeling of rejection, the feeling of silence is taking over you, what's happening? You are equating the limitations you feel like that rejection means. And you're saying that's your identity. But you have an opportunity to realize that that is not the case, especially when you remember that other people are making it all about them and that they're empowered people making their own decisions that they think are best for them at that moment in time. You can remember that those limitations and that story you are telling yourself, those are all thoughts. That's it. Those are all simply thoughts. And that's a fundamental principle of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? We use a lot of modalities here. We are not prescribed to any one specific modality. But the cornerstone of cognitive behavior therapy is those are all just thoughts. See, I'm not worth it. See, I'm not ready. See, they don't value me. Those are all thoughts. And your brilliant brain finding evidence to support those thoughts. Change the assumption. You'll find new evidence. And this is something we're going to dive into more and more as the weeks progress. Do you believe them? Do you believe what the haters are saying? Do you really believe those assumptions? Do you really believe those thoughts? That's the question. Because we gotta, and if you do, because I understand some of you will look at me and say, yeah, I do kind of believe I'm not ready. So we have just cast a huge light on something to work on internally, energetically, because you were born lucky and you're born ready. And you can shift your assumptions and one day simply wake up and decide you are ready. I am ready today. And it is those who do that, who you see getting all that success you want, making all the money that you want to make. What is the difference? It's because that person wakes up and says, you know what, fuck it, I'm ready. Nobody has come down on high and given it to that person. Right? So you can do that too. And it could be a big shift or it could be a small one. You can do it in micro steps. We don't care how. But I'm casting light on the opportunity that you guys have to do that. And in fact, rejection, crickets, and hate could be a stimulus, a catalyst to this. Because when you get the rejection, and if you feel it so painfully, I'm going to run through the process one more time. You ask yourself, what is this confirming for me? And then you work with that thought, because that's all it is, a thought. You work with that thought. Because the fact of the matter is, you do not need validation from anyone else. You can wake up one day and decide to do it, to do the thing that you want to do. And that will always be the most powerful form of validation, the one you find within yourself. Because even when everybody is giving you the praise, the accolades, you're the shit, you're the best, you do all this. If you don't believe that to be true, you let it wash away. You don't take it in. Yeah, but you shrug compliments, you deflect them. Anybody ever do this? You get a compliment, you deflect it. Oh, you look good. Oh, no, well, whatever. That's because you don't have that validation within yourself. When you do have it within yourself, somebody comes along and gives you a compliment, you're like, thank you. Thank you, I know. Thank you, right? People laugh. It's not arrogant. It's because you know it to be true. And so that's why that is the most important form of validation there is. You know that you are here to serve. You know that you are here to help. And that will always be the most powerful thing. And that's what defines you way beyond rejection, crickets, or hate. And that's the culmination of today's class. I hope you found it super duper helpful on our sort of month anniversary of Mindset Mastery class. Let me tell you some thoughts I'm having for future classes. I'm thinking next week it would be fun to do an open Q&A. So I want you guys to know this in advance, and I will make many a post about this so that you guys can start thinking about questions, especially considering the recap and stuff that we've already gone through. If any questions pop up with regards to that, I think it would be really fun to have a session of dialogue and conversation. And questions are not just meant for me to answer. I'm not the be all end all. We have an incredible community of people here who could chime in and share their perspectives as well. So that is my plan for next week. And then shiny object syndrome stuff for the week after that. There will be a post in here calling for your 6-word updates, which is a synthesis, a distillation, a question, something you're going to chew on regarding the call today. And any other housekeeping things? I think that's good. I think that's plenty. I love you all so much. The truest form of validation comes from you. You can wake up today, even though you're not asleep. Right now, you can wake up from the fog you've been in and decide that you are ready and decide to do the thing. And in fact, there is no other way to begin to get it done. You must do that. I love you all so much, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.